Thank you, Paul, for joining our podcast. Pumped to have you here. Paul Higgins, paulhigginsmentoring.com, also has a podcast that many people in the ecosystem across Salesforce ecosystem consulting and other CRM platforms, even outside of Salesforce, know very well. Welcome on the podcast, Paul.
Yeah, great to be here, John and Avinash.
And just to set the stage and kind of go backwards a little bit, can you tell us about kind of your background, especially when you started out in the tech space, consulting space, and take us back a little bit before everything you've done with Paul Higgins Mentoring and the podcast and all that stuff?
Sure, yeah. Well, you can probably tell by my accent that I'm an Australian. So I was born in Australia, but I was really lucky to work for a corporate American company for 20 years. And it was one that's been around for a long time. Actually, I think it's well over 150 years. So that was Coca-Cola. So I was really lucky that I got to live in Australia, but worked for a global company. And what I do now is basically live in Australia and help people globally, and predominantly in North America, and the lion's share of that is America. And yeah, so if you can't understand me, I recommend, just if you're two timesing it or 1.5 times it, just go to whatever you do. So my dad worked for Coca-Cola for all of his career, and I was told I could never get a full-time job there, but I could always work as part-time. And they got really desperate, and I thought, there's a bit of a break before I go on holidays. So I was going to go overseas, and long story short, 18 years later, I worked my way from a rep to a director and had a brilliant experience. I think at one stage, the Coke company had 152 CRMs globally, and I was on a lot of global projects. But my last job was buying billion-dollar acquisitions or not buying billion-dollar acquisitions, whatever my decision was. But it was a wonderful journey, and in the back of my mind, I always knew that not that I had to leave, but I wanted to leave corporate for various reasons. But the two key ones is that I always wanted to start my own business. And the second was that I had an inherited kidney disease from my mum, which meant that at some point I was going to go on dialysis and hopefully have a transplant. I didn't want the pressure of corporate feeling like they owed me anything. I wanted to sort of be independent, run my own show. So I left that in 2011. Left corporate, and I can sort of go into more detail, but that's sort of the quick background of how I went from corporate into deciding to do my own thing.
That's quite the story. And you touched on it a little bit, and I usually don't jump into these things this early on, but I know you mentioned motivation, and we hear that in a lot of people we talk to that launch agencies, right? To leave corporate in like a comfortable gig or the comfort of we'll call it a full-time job. There's some motivation people have. Like, it's like freedom. It's, I want to be a gazillionaire. It's, I want to see if I can do this. I want to travel and be remote. I guess, how important do you feel the aspect of being motivated to actually do something like launch your own thing is to people that are thinking of launching or even growing their business?
Yeah, I think it's really important because it's hard. Like it's hard, and it's going to be harder than what you think initially, and you've just got to be prepared for that. I don't think there's ever a perfect time. Every year we'd go on a golf trip, and I'd promise myself that by the next golf trip I wouldn't still be in corporate, and then again I would be. It was like probably 7 years, and I always wondered what the best opportunity was. So therefore, I didn't leave until I thought I had the best opportunity. But thanks to my condition, it sort of forced me to say, well, just leave and the opportunity will present itself. So if you're listening or watching this and you're thinking, I don't 100% know what I do, I think if you're committed that you want to do this and you don't want to work for someone else anymore, the opportunities will present itself. And I think it's easier if you leverage your network. Like I was lucky that I leveraged my network and I set it up that I could get a certain amount of income just to get me going. At the start, that certainly helps. But I left to be an executive coach because I knew I was great with leading people. I ended up running and selling and outsourcing in a technology business. So, I went on a journey, but what I left with wasn't what I am doing now.
That's amazing. So the pivot that you talked about is obviously fascinating, but want to go one step back where you were in IT, you were running projects, you were on like multiple CRM. But then you mentioned something like where you were doing multi-billion dollar acquisitions, I'm guessing you moved to the M&A side of things. So just talk us through, how that shift happened, because those are like two different worlds.
Yeah, sure. And to be clear, I was actually never in IT. I started in sales and then worked my way up general management into broader. So I was always on the commercial side. But I remember back in 1993, I was a brand new rep and mobile phones just started getting around. And this guy came into our, the great thing with Coca-Cola is you always got the best minds to come and present to you because we made lots of money as the system and you always had great people from the States come out. And he said, look, you're going to be opening your car, you're going to be booking your ticket on the flight all through a mobile phone. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is wonderful. And everyone else in the room's like, this is never going to happen. I'm like, I'm always looking at the future. I'm curious, etc. So in short, I went and bought a mobile phone and because Coke wouldn't provide one. And then I just called all my customers and said, when the stock arrives, call me. I'll get there. I'll put the stock up and whatever it's cost you, $1 or whatever it's cost you to make the phone call will more than offset by selling more stock. And because my father worked in the business, I kept trying to work out, why is this guy winning all the awards? Like, he's got to be cheating. Like, something's happening. And all I was doing is using technology. So I never worked in IT, but I always used technology to advance my career and get a great outcome for clients. And if you look at it, the Coke system and say Salesforce is very similar, where you've got, Salesforce does the product and the marketing, and then you as a partner go and do all the implementation and everything else. And the Coke company was the same. Coke came up with a formula, they did the marketing, and then the bottlers basically went and did everything else. So I find a lot of parallels between the SaaS world and the Coca-Cola world. I'd just rather use technology than drink Coca-Cola. No offense, Coke, but
yeah, just circling back on that, but how did that pivot to M&A happen? I don't know if it's like true M&A, but I heard you mention you were like closing deals or like making acquisitions.
Yeah, it was just when you become, I was head of a couple of divisions. So one was a juice division in Australia, and we have very low market share. And I used to get on a call with the president of the Minute Maid. I've always been one that brought people together. So I wasn't a nobody in Australia, which was, one of the smallest market shares for juice in the world. But I pulled together the key juice people in the Coke system around the world and said, how are we all, working together to grow? And he said, you've got to, Paul, you can't grow organic. You got to acquire, you got to get money from the board. And so therefore I was the commercial lead. So I was buying assets that I wanted to bring on, and we bought a couple of assets and it worked pretty well. But Australia being a small type market didn't really we achieved enormous success, but probably not what we ultimately wanted because there wasn't a lot of good companies to buy. And then I moved across into another division, which was hotels, cafes and restaurants. And then once again, we did some deals. So I did a global deal with Jim Beam and did some other things to acquire. So I was more of the commercial person, and often what you bought, you then ran. So the Coke model or the Amatil, which I worked for, believed in that model.
So we have to that point, and then we preface a little bit what you do now, and then there's this thing in the middle, right? So from the transition of what we just kind of talked about with Coca-Cola and all that stuff, and what you do now, I'm assuming there was some kind of transition where you're doing things in the middle as well.
Yeah.
Between those two worlds.
Yeah, well, in short, I loved the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That was something that I used to always take my team through. I went through it. So I said, one day when I leave corporate, I want to facilitate that. So I did that. And that got me sort of flying around Asia, delivering a brand new program. And it was called the 5 Choices of Extraordinary People. And what it did was say, hey, here's neuroscience, here's technology, and this is the way we work. How can we work more effectively? So that was brilliant. But I realized that the person in Franklin Covey were making all the money from me working as a facilitator in the room. And I thought, well, that's not going to work. So then I went into small business, and what I was doing is just mentoring small businesses. Given all my Coke experience, there was sort of 2 key buckets. There was one as well, you're doing everything as the owner, so how can we get more people for you? And the other is you really don't have great technology to speed that up. So in short, that turned into basically build an outsourcing business based out of the Philippines to mainly service the Australian market. So that gave access to talent they couldn't really afford onshore. And then the technology helped them to access that. So really from 2012 to 2016, that's what I did. I ran an outsourcing business, technology business. I brought in a business partner that ended up running the operations of it. And I sort of sat there more as a consultant and a strategy. And why I'm saying that is I think often what happens is a lot of Salesforce partners fall in love with the technology, but sometimes they forget that there's a business need for the technology. So for me, it was great that I call Coke an MBA, where you just got to see so many businesses and so many business models. It was brilliant. So you're constantly learning how businesses run. So when I had my technology business, I could understand it from an owner's point of view. And I suppose that's the bridge that I love to help people create, because some people have never run their own business or been in a business. They've actually, been more on the technology side of a business.
So you brought up an interesting point. In the Salesforce ecosystem, operations often gets neglected. When we are talking operations, we're limiting to a bookkeeper. That's typically operation. And funny, a CEO pops out of nowhere when someone's ready to sell. Like all of a sudden, there's a CEO. Like this person never existed for the past 20 years. I know you didn't run a Salesforce SI, but you run an outsourcing business, which is also consulting. So would you mind double clicking into why you had to bring a partner who's laser focused on operations, and what benefited the business by bringing on someone outside of
Great question, Avinash. And like most things in life, it's coincidence, when things happen. But I heard of a platform called Podio, and I thought that would be a really good platform to tap into the outsource people. And I was looking for sort of like something that I could customize, right? And most of the businesses I was working with couldn't afford a Salesforce at that point, because Salesforce hadn't really gone down to that level. And I was at an entrepreneur's dinner in Sydney, and Entrepreneur of the Year, and I bumped into this guy, and he said, "This is what I do. I worked in the government and IT. I love IT. Now I'm doing this Podio thing." And I'm like, and he was 10 years younger than me and incredibly enthusiastic. And I thought, there we go. I loved the user. I loved the strategy, sales, and marketing side. And he loved the technology and the operations. And I said to him, "Hey, why don't we just try working together for 6 months and see if it works?" Lo and behold, that went on for quite a few years, and we ended up selling the business to a Google partner in 2019.
So when you said operations, it's more around the managing the team, working with the Philippines resources, while you focused on the sales and marketing. You focused more on the customer engagement, and he was managing humans within the company.
Yeah, decisions is we might decide on what technology stacks. We chose a CRM called Copper that was, it wasn't owned by Google, but it was funded by Google. And we knew that a lot of the businesses that we worked with, agencies, for example, had, Google as that was their bread and butter. So we thought, well, we'll strategically go after that. So when we made that decision together, as far as the depths of how you set it up, how do you train people, how you onboard people, that was what he did. Whereas I was more working with the Copper partners in the US to say, well, how can we get an unfair share of leads off you? So that's how we divided and conquered our roles.
Interesting.
I know we've known each other for a while, Paul, and you mentioned the luck aspect of meeting that person and stuff, and you also mentioned the value of networking, and you're good at connecting people and even seeing it firsthand, knowing you. And you talked about the 5 habits and organization and things like that. And as you've been saying it, I've been thinking of even how you are and how you operate and how I interact with you. It's almost like, is it luck or is it actually connecting people and going out there and networking and connecting A with B and being hyper proactive and responsive and connecting? Because even in our interactions, you're way more organized and highly more responsive and have more connections than I do. And we talked about the podcast, even since I was on yours less than a year ago, you've had over 100 episodes even since then. So is it, from your perspective, is it really luck in a lot of cases, or is it really putting in the effort and connecting people and putting in the reps and doing that at those aspects of things, so that luck essentially happens by accident, I guess, for lack of a better term?
And what do they say, when luck meets opportunity? But I think, John, for me, I was really lucky that I had 2 incredible parents. Mum sadly passed away 6 years ago, but my dad was the sales optimist guy, right? He unfortunately had polio as a child, never went to school, but he leveraged people. He's brilliant with people, brilliant with relationships. And Dad did very well at Coca-Cola before all of the systems came in, right? Dad's a connector. He sees opportunities. He'll like talk to one person, say, you should talk to this person. He's brilliant at it. He's just naturally good at that. And then my mum was a school teacher and a curriculum advisor who was very planned and organised. So in a way, I sort of got the combination of both. But today, as an example, I was talking to one of the leading AI experts, and he does training for corporates. And I'm like, well, I've got all these Salesforce partners that I've had on my podcast, and I know that their company, their clients need AI training, right? So why don't we get a group of 10 of them together? You can show them what they do. And then as a value add, they can introduce you to their client base. So if there's 3 partners of Salesforce working in that company, all of a sudden the one that brings them AI training, one of the world's best at it, they're going to be seen better than the other 2. And also the Salesforce partners get an opportunity. And why I'm sort of using that example is the Coke company also worked that way. The Coke company was a massive network, and it always looked for what are things that money can't buy, right? How can we give someone an experience that money can't buy? So I'm always looking at how do I connect a dot that people don't see themselves and give them an experience that they just can't get otherwise. And that's what I constantly do. And I think to answer the question in a short way, I think some of it's nurture from my parents, or nature, I should say, and nurture from my parents. And then some of it's just the environment that I've been lucky enough to spend my career in, which the Coke company was, it was brilliant. Like, someone in the Coke company always had an answer. You just had to find who that was. And it's the same with setting up your own business. If you're thinking of how do I set up my own Salesforce practice or whatever it is, someone's already gone through that. So don't try to start at greenfield. Don't always try to start at yourself. How do you leverage your network to get an answer? That was the way that I always looked at it.
So what's the number one, or maybe there's not number one, maybe there are a couple falls that you come across when you're coaching founders and the great people running great companies. But the first thing you I mean, this is an area where, they absolutely must be. Is there like a common theme or a common area that often gets left out?
Yeah, look, I've been doing this since 2011, plus, my experience in business before that. And I think there's 3 key things. I think one is people don't position themselves well enough, right? That to use the simple analogy we all use, they're trying to sell a drill when someone wants a hole. Actually, someone doesn't want a hole. They want their family picture on it, right? So I often see that people say, I'm a Salesforce consultant. I'm like, okay, so there's 25, 30,000 of those. What makes you unique? And I also think that in that positioning piece, people try to be all things to all people. So what I say is, look, just make it easy for yourself. Pick a niche so that people really know that you work for them. Give them a really big promise statement so that they clearly know the benefit of working with you. And I can tell you, it's not Agent Force or, all the other parts of Salesforce. It's actually the result that they get. And then create a marketing funnel so that it makes it easy for people to buy from you. So I think that positioning piece, if I said to anyone, what's the one thing you have to do as a business owner? You just got to make strategic choices. Who are you going to work for? Really understand their problems and then go and deliver a solution against those problems. That's probably the most easiest thing. And you've probably heard where people say business ultimately is having a great offer and being able to sell it. That's business in a nutshell.
Yep, and I think, so we go through the phases. So you had your Coca-Cola, I call phase 1, right? All that phase 1. Phase 2 was that area we talked about with, you talked about with meeting your ops guy and having that solution that you essentially, I think, exited. So then the what we're talking about now is how you help business owners, consultancies. Is it that are launching or trying to grow or scale? I guess, can you set the stage again for us on kind of this phase 3 of Paul Higgins mentoring and what you do now?
Great question, John. And just very quickly, I was lucky enough to have a transplant in 2019. So I went on dialysis, had kidney failure, went on dialysis, had a transplant. And post that, I'm thinking, what do I really want to do? Because I got a second chance in life. I came out of that. I nearly lost my life when I had a kidney removed, but got through it. I'm like, what do I really want to do? And I look back at my mum as a school teacher, and I'm like, I just want to help people, right? And I then decided, well, why don't I mentor rather than run my own business? That was effectively the key thing. And, I think in that, I really saw the opportunity to help people that were leaving corporate to start their own business. So I did that. And now it's sort of evolved to, well, I can still help those people with the podcast, etc. It's really those people that are, maybe 250 to $1 million in turnover, but they're predominantly the person that's stuck in the middle of everything, right? They're still doing delivery. They're still doing sales. Like they're doing everything and they want the team.
Sending invoices, sending invoices.
So AI's really helped, but still, if you look at your daily sheet, everything still comes back to you, right? The AI speeds it up, but it still comes back to you. So ultimately what I'm doing is helping people to go from that stage as a solo entrepreneur, consultant or a couple of people to, well, how can I get to, 2 or maybe even 5 million to sell the business? How do I get to that next level and have a business that does give me the freedom that I wanted when I left corporate?
And is that typically mainly in the CRM space, the SaaS space? Is there is it anybody? Is it specific technologies? Is it any kind of entrepreneur?
Yeah, good.
Or do you have that even niched down?
Great point. I'm fairly agnostic in the fact that I do call it consultants, but it's predominantly technology. And if you look at the three worlds, I think they're colliding. You've got SaaS world, which is normally SaaS partners like Salesforce. You've got automation, which, is Zapier, Make, now it's N8N and other workflow automation. And then the third one is AI consultants. So that might be voice, it might be on that key LLMs themselves. But those three worlds are colliding, and effectively the principles of running a B2B service business, I think, are the same, but how and what you deliver the result to the client just varies a little.
So you brought up like 3 levers, and the last one was like the marketing, which basically like, quality content where someone can reach out to you. I don't think this is very different from the other ecosystem, but like just using Salesforce as a reference, Salesforce customers have bought based on connections. Like they worked with you in the past, they know you, or someone referred. It's predominantly through connections, referrals, or like RFP submissions. The standard way,
Yes.
rather than reading through someone's LinkedIn post and say, okay, I like this post, so I'm going to give this guy my next Salesforce implementation. So that's where I'm curious when you said like marketing. So is that more tailored to an independent contractor role where you could put up content and you could get some independent contractor gig? But in your experience, does it also translate to an engagement?
Yeah, look, great question, Avinash. I think, well, firstly, there's 3 key things that I call it multiplier method. There's positioning, which you could call marketing. There's productization, which is the offer. So, and in particular, it's your business model. How do you structure your business model? And the third thing is performance, which is normally team and also your go-to-market. So they're the 3 key essentials. But on your question around the go-to-market, to me, there's a couple of key things. One is network. Like relationships have always been important. They're probably more so at the moment because everyone can clone themselves on AI. Like, it's so confusing. You get bombarded by people. Are they real? Can they really add the value? So I think people are going to their network more and more. So I think that's really important. And it's not just your Salesforce network, it's the network outside of the Salesforce ecosystem as well. The next is outreach. I still think that LinkedIn is still the best Rolodex in the world, to use an old term. So I think you can still find people. And what's the great thing about LinkedIn is that you can get more specific rather than just sending something broad brush. Sales Navigator, et cetera, allows you to make sure that you're reaching out at the right time. And then the last one, which I think is missed, is strategic partners. I think, I'll give you a quick example where, if you're selling an ERP, so John, I know you asked around CRM, we're broader if you're selling an ERP. Well, private equity firms have maybe 40, 50 people in their portfolio, right? What they want is better data so that they can make more money. The portfolio company wants to make more money as well, but they don't want to be constantly asked all the time what the information is and the data is. And you, as let's say a Salesforce consultant, can provide the solution. Go have a relationship with the private equity firm, and then they'll give you access into the 40 partners rather than trying to hit each of them individually. So that's just one example of what I call a strategic partner. And I think what often happens is, I call it the one-to-many sale. I think often what we do from a LinkedIn perspective is spend a lot of time just going out to one, but wouldn't it be great if you can go out and get 40 at a time or 80 at a time? They're the 3 things. In summary, it's your network, it's outreach, and then it's strategic partners.
I think You mentioned offer, and I have conversations with people all the time on this, especially for the services side, right? Technology consulting. Because when we say offer, it's really a productization, right? Is that kind of this, right? That it's kind of interchangeable. It's how do you go from billing hours and just endless hourly billing to like an offer? Like, what's your offer? What's your product? And that's why I think when you talked about the first part, those things all go together. But I just would love to hear your perspective on what an offer is, especially in the services and consulting side, where it's not a tangible thing per se, but you still want to have an offer of some sort.
Yeah, look, I'll give you two quick examples. So one is working with a partner. It's not Salesforce, but it's Zoho. And he was all things to all people. We went back, pattern matched, and it was attorneys, estate planners and attorneys, writing wills, etc., was where he'd had real success. So we doubled down on that. And then we got the 80-20 of every deployment. So, let's package that up. So you're selling an end solution. So it's not selling a full ERP, but it's giving them a solution that you've got good case study examples. So instead of doing it per hour, you're just selling an implementation and the result. And I always say to someone with a consultant, like, if the client's going to get 90%, you keep 10, right? So if the total value is 200,000, you charge them 20 and then everyone's happy, right? So rather than saying, let's do it by the hour basis. So that's sort of one example of productization of an offer. Another one is I've got a fantastic Monday partner at the moment who's a client that was doing $10,000 deals. He's now, what Monday can't do, he's now going creating custom AI solutions. Right? The challenge he's got is he's selling a custom AI solution for, say, $200,000 now, but it's actually not taking him all of those hours to create it, because with AI and customization. So that's why it's even more important now to do a share of the value gained for the client rather than saying it's going to take me this amount of hours at this rate. I think that model, the way that AI development's going is really challenging that.
And are you, since we're on the AI topic, are you noticing where the implementation partners are being pressurized to deliver something using AI in like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, especially because of all the noise that's out there? You don't need to spend 500K. You could just use this prompt and get it done with like 5,000. There's like all sort of information that's being put out there. Wondering to get your perspective, how that's hurting the partners, when they're having conversation with customers.
Yeah, look, it's a really good point. We've seen this quite a bit where someone has said to their team, hey, you don't need a Salesforce partner. We can do this internal. Just use ChatGPT, Claude, whatever to guide you. And obviously it's not that easy and it's not that simple. So when I always say to someone, if someone says that to you, just wait till they come back to you, because chances are it won't work and you can help them with that. So, it's a bit like the overhype. The ads and all the TikTok and the YouTube says, you can achieve all of this, but the reality, I think, is still playing out, and you still need someone that can pattern match where things go wrong. And we all know, I call it red pen, black pen. We used to do all the coding and do everything, right? Now the AI does it, but you still need to red pen it. Like, you still need to be the teacher, to use my mum's analogy, to make sure that it's correct. And I don't think the AI is that advanced, or certainly the stuff that I've seen, it's not that advanced at the moment. And, if you look at AI voice, for example, it's great. But the other day I went to book a hotel to go and see John in the US. To try to book a hotel and a round of golf through an AI voice agent was very, very difficult. And I'm in this space. I understand this space. And I was completely frustrated by the experience. I'm like, that's where people also deploy things too quickly without actually really understanding the client and the customer perspective.
I mean, my take on AI, and it's biased, it's just my opinion. I have a strong feeling that it's going to go down the more enterprise route. Like, I don't think there's a customer who exists in this world who would say, I love Salesforce, I love Oracle, or I love SAP. But they all still stick to it. It's because like cost of replacement is so high. Just I have this hunch that AI will ultimately end up sitting within the enterprises, and customers will start using AI within that. It's just because of the cost of replacement is too high. It might be like 50% accurate, 60% accurate, but I think they'll still try to make it work versus trying to build something custom and then to your point, it just doesn't work because it doesn't talk to your CRM or everything. You're a SAP shop, you have everything on SAP, and you have a custom agent who's like, what is this SAP? Like, teach me SAP. You're like,
Yeah,
I don't need to teach you SAP.
I know. And I think there's a huge amount of contradictions at the moment. I personally, I talk to, AI world leaders every day, like I mentioned before, and I think we're all seeing how it'll play out. But it's a bit like when, the iPhone first came out, I think it was 17, 18 years ago. We all had Blackberries. We didn't like them. We bring our iPhone, and then IT would say, "How that doesn't, it's going to harm our infrastructure. You can't use it, etc." And I think at the moment it's a bit like that. Like companies are really slow to move because of security reasons, and I get that. But the end user's using it at home, and they're like, "Hang on, I just want to bring my AI to work." Right. So, and I think some of the smaller businesses may actually have a benefit because they can move quicker and they've got less security and less infrastructure they've got to change to get there. So I don't know. What I do know is it's exciting and it's the best, in my career of 34 years, it's the best time to be in business. This AI for me personally and what it's been able to even help me help my clients has been incredible, but I'm still not quite sure how it's going to play out. Will LLMs win? Will the data sit in an LLM? Will it sit in Salesforce? Like all of those things I think are still up for grabs. I do believe in your point that I think the guys with the money are ultimately, I think, going to get most of the share rather than some of the small startups that just won't be able to get traction, or they'll be bought by the big guys, which Salesforce has made a habit of in the past.
So I know is I love AI for the main reason it can just generate a Word doc for me. I don't have to worry about formatting and making it all nice. It's like just the easy stuff I love AI for. Make this PDF, make this draft email. It's perfect. So a couple of things. So it's the Paul Higgins podcast. And is that on Spotify, YouTube?
Yeah, it's everywhere we could think that you'd want to listen. We've got it on there.
Awesome. And then one more question back to you working with your clients. What are the different engagement models you have? Is it one-on-one? Is it usually like a 3, 6, 12-month thing? I guess, what's your engagement model when you work with your clients? How does that work?
Yes, I like to call it a hybrid. So technically it's group. So we might have 8 to 10 people on each individual call. But what I do is talk to each person as if it's a one-on-one for maybe 5 minutes. And then what we do is ask people to share their experience that they've got in that specific challenge they've got. And then we, you go and hear the next person. So you get the benefit of getting my experience shared to you, and you get the benefit of getting other people to help you with that challenge. But then you also get to see other people's businesses. And what you don't even know is a challenge, someone in the call will say, I'm focusing this, and you're like, oh God, yeah, actually, I didn't even think about that. Of course I'm going to come up with that. So, it's the best of, I like to call it a hybrid best of both worlds.
Perfect. And we always wrap up with the same question. And where is Paul going and going to be in the next 3 to 5 years? Where are you looking to go when we talk again and have you on another episode? What's your vision and where is Paul going?
Yeah, well, look, I started this because it didn't exist, right? When I was a business owner looking at all the challenges and everything, I couldn't really find anyone that understood my world and wanted to help me. So I just want to help more people. So ultimately just having more groups of 8 to 10 people and help as many people as possible. And then on my personal side, we spoke before we went to air. I'm a golfer. I love golf. And I want to create an app that helps golfers in the future. So, it's a bit like, hey, you teach this stuff, but are you really hands-on learning it? And by me launching my own app, which is supported by AI, I think I get the best of both worlds.
Awesome. And I'll use it for sure. I know, like we talked about, there's no question I'm using it. It was quite a story for ways to people to contact you. I know you have podcasts, you have various channels. What's the best way if someone wants to reach out to you? How do they reach you?
Higginsmentoring.com is by far that's the home. That's where you can find out about me and see if I can help you or someone in your network.
Awesome. Thanks. It was great having you on, Paul, and I'll see you in a month and looking forward to meeting up in person.
Same, John. And I wish Indian cricket all the best.
The feeling is mutual. I'll see you on the turf.
See you guys.